On the night before our wedding, my fiancée's bedroom photos with her first love went viral on social media. When I confronted her, she just shrugged it off with pure disdain. It was just a bit of fun, Ethan. You can understand that, right? Besides, that was ages ago. You weren't my husband back then. Later, when the wedding photos of me and my gorgeous college crush went viral, she came to me, screaming and losing her mind. I simply flashed the wedding band on my ring finger. What does it have to do with you? You're not my wife anyway. Chloe's intimate photos were spreading like wildfire on everyone's Snapchat stories. In the photo, she was fast asleep on a king-sized bed, wearing a sexy lace nightgown, her cheeks still flushed with a post-intimacy glow. My group chat with my friends exploded, and everyone was tagging me. Ethan bro, is that your fiancé? The second I saw the messages, I called her to demand an explanation. But to my surprise, her voice on the phone was completely indifferent. Who I hang out with is none of your business, Ethan. We're not married yet, so stop trying to control me. Besides, I agreed to marry you, but I never said I loved you. Before I could even reply, she hung up on me. A few minutes later, Mason sent me another photo. This time it was a selfie of Chloe and a man. The man had his arm wrapped tightly around Chloe's waist, a smug, triumphant grin plastered across his face. I recognized him. It was Jax, Chloe's first love from college. I slowly slipped off my engagement ring and sent Chloe a text. The wedding is off. Have fun playing your games. Putting my phone down, a wave of bitterness washed over me. Chloe and I were childhood sweethearts. We practically grew up together. Our families were close business partners, and they had arranged our marriage long ago. I really thought we loved each other, and that we were a perfect match. I thought it was a dream come true, but I had ignored how fast she went through boyfriends during our college years. It was faster than she changed her clothes. At first, I told myself she was just young, wanted to have fun, and wasn't ready to be tied down by marriage. Because I loved her, I tolerated it over and over again. But now, a sudden thought popped into my head. Why should I? What did she actually take me for? Not long after I sent the text, Chloe called me on FaceTime. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm and annoyance. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum right now, Ethan? Calling off the wedding? Please. Do you think your parents would ever agree to that? The anger that had been building up in my chest finally erupted at her condescending tone. My words represent my parents. Don't ever contact me again. Chloe paused, seemingly shocked and confused. Are you insane? When I was with my exes before, didn't you even buy us dinner? Why are you acting up now? Before I could speak, Jax's mocking laughter came through the speaker. Oh, is your fiancé jealous? Tell him we're just playing house. You're going to marry him anyway, so tell him not to be such a loser. Jax continued to tease her in the background. Babe, aren't you going to comfort him? He sounds like he's actually crying. The sound of his voice disgusted me. I was just about to hang up. Then I heard Chloe's cold voice. There's no need to comfort him. He always acts like this. Just ignore him. She sounded so sure of herself, as if she knew I would always crawl back to her. Then she said in a sweet, pampering voice, Babe, didn't you say you've never flown first class? I'll buy you the most expensive ticket for our flight back tomorrow. After walking out of the house, I wandered aimlessly down the streets. I bought a 6-pack of beer and sat by the harbor, watching the sunset. My phone kept buzzing with new messages. My friends had found out about Chloe, and they were all sending messages of support. Ethan, where you at, man? Want us to come over and grab a drink? Don't sweat it, bro. I did some digging. That Jax guy is just a broke gold digger. I didn't reply to any of them, but every time I saw Chloe's name, my chest tightened. Fortunately, the cool breeze blowing off the water gradually calmed my racing mind. I didn't know how much I had drank, but the sky had turned pitch black, and the harbor lights were starting to flicker on. Fuck. I cursed out loud, throwing the empty beer can into the water. You absolute bitch. I screamed into the empty air, throwing one can after another into the water. Yet, the suffocating weight in my chest didn't lighten at all. Hey, you over there. No littering in the water. A park ranger with a flashlight came marching toward me. I quickly jumped up and bolted. Normally, I would have lost her in seconds. But with the alcohol sloshing in my system, my feet were heavy, and she ended up chasing me for 10 whole minutes. By the time I finally shook her off, I collapsed onto a curb, panting heavily. I lifted the warm, half-empty beer can that had been shaking in my hand, ready to take a gulp. Suddenly, a shadow blocked the streetlight. A voice like silver bells echoed in my ears. I looked up. Under the dim golden light, a woman was standing right in front of me. Our eyes met. Her eyes seemed to hold a soft, swirling ocean, making it impossible for me to look away. It was Sienna, our college campus queen. What was she doing here? The harbor lights outlined her flawless face. Her long hair danced in the wind, carrying a faint, sweet scent of gardenias. Her nose twitched slightly, and she smiled softly. Have you been drinking? I cleared my throat, threw the beer can on the ground, and quickly crushed it with my shoe. No. Just collecting cans for fun. She watched me quietly, then raised an eyebrow with a playful smirk. Right. I was going to say, the great Ethan, heir to the Miller Group, couldn't possibly be running away from a park ranger for littering. I kept quiet. The silence between us felt like a lifetime. Oh, is your face red? What's wrong? Did the breakup hit you that hard? Guess you're not as tough as you look. Sienna reached out, her slender, fair fingers gently pinching my cheek. A subtle smile played in her eyes. Maybe it was the alcohol talking. Or maybe it was just a crazy impulse. I grabbed her wrist, looking straight into her eyes. Sienna, do you want to come back to my place for a drink? My dog Tommy can do backflips. The second the words left my mouth, I saw a flash of shock in Sienna's eyes. Honestly, between consenting adults, an invitation like that was pretty obvious. And I instantly regretted my impulsiveness. She was the ultimate goddess of our entire social circle, every guy's dream girl. There was no way she would agree to such a ridiculous, forward request. I must have been out of my mind to say that. Just as I was about to apologize, she bit her lower lip slightly and whispered, "Okay." The next morning, I was woken up by my phone blaring. I looked down and realized Sienna was lying right next to me, her hand resting softly on my chest. What happened last night? I held my pounding, hung overhead and tried to piece together my memories. But no matter how hard I tried, I could only recall fragments. I only remembered bringing her home, pinning her against the door, and holding her tightly. She had asked me, "Aren't we supposed to have a drink first?" And I think I replied, "You are my drink. Let me take a sip first." After that, everything was a blur. The phone was still ringing. I squinted and pressed answer. Chloe's demanding voice immediately blasted through the receiver. "Pick me up in 30 minutes. I want to go shopping." I instantly woke up. I glanced at Sienna next to me and lowered my voice. "What does your shopping have to do with me? Stop calling and annoying me." As I spoke, Sienna stirred, letting out a soft, sleepy whimper, seemingly annoyed by the noise. Even though it was just a quick, quiet sound, Chloe caught it. Her voice instantly went up an octave. "Ethan, where are you? Is there a woman with you?" "None of your business." I snapped, hung up the phone, and turned it completely off. Then I pulled Sienna back into my arms and happily went back to sleep. I didn't wake up again until noon. When I opened my eyes, the space beside me was empty. I sat up, shaking my head. Thinking back to last night, it felt like a dream. Only the slight ache in my lower back reminded me that it was very, very real. Walking out of the bedroom, I saw Sienna sitting in the living room. She was wearing one of my oversized white t-shirts, showcasing her long, gorgeous legs. My brain short-circuited and I blurted out, "Did you bring your ID?" She turned to look at me, a hint of confusion on her face. I walked over, leaning down to wrap my arms around her waist, breathing in the scent of her hair. Sienna's eyes widened slightly, her beautiful, clear gaze shimmering. I whispered in her ear, "I'm taking you to City Hall to sign some papers. The kind that lets you drink at my house for the rest of your life." At this moment, I was completely sober. I could hear my own heartbeat. It was louder and faster than ever before. An hour later, I walked out of City Hall, holding Sienna's hand in one of mine, and our official marriage certificate in the other. "It's official. You're legally mine." Sienna looked at me and smiled beautifully. "Getting swept off my feet like this feels a little too easy. What about our wedding?" I couldn't help but laugh, pulling her head gently against my chest. "Don't worry. I'll give you the wedding of your dreams." Over the next few days, Sienna and I were busy picking out wedding rings, trying on dresses, and discussing details with the wedding planner. We watched the sunrise and sunset together. We talked about everything under the stars. The connection between us was so natural. We even discovered we both wanted a rustic wedding in the valleys of Montana. Without any hesitation, we started planning the venue setup. Every day, she would sketch ideas on paper, and a perfect wedding scene began to take shape under her pen. But one afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call. "Is this Mr. Miller? Your custom tuxedo has arrived at the store. When would you like to come in for a fitting?" I was confused. Tuxedo? What tuxedo? Sienna and I were planning on getting custom suits, but we hadn't placed any orders yet. The person on the line paused before explaining, "Miss Davis ordered it for you a few days ago and left your number." I glanced at Sienna, covered the microphone, and walked out to the balcony. I got straight to the point. "I don't know anything about this. Contact Miss Davis directly. Please don't call this number again. Thank you." After hanging up, I frowned. What was Chloe playing at? Since when did I ask her to get me a tuxedo? Right on cue, Chloe's call came through. "Ethan, what are you doing? Why haven't you called me in days?" Her voice quickly turned impatient and bossy. "I ordered a tuxedo for you. Make sure you pick it up. We're having dinner with my parents this weekend to talk about the wedding date. And don't you dare show up with that miserable face of yours." I found it almost laughable. Miss Davis, I'm already married. I'll inform my parents about it. I don't want the tuxedo, and please stop calling me. I don't want my wife to get the wrong idea. Chloe went dead silent. A second later, a screeching scream erupted from the phone. Are you out of your mind, Ethan? Where the hell did you get a wife? I know you're mad about me and Jax, but I was just having some fun with him. Otherwise, how else am I supposed to enjoy my freedom before getting married? I could practically picture her face twisting in rage on the other end. Can't you just be understanding for once? I let out a cold chuckle and didn't bother to reply. She had been spoiled since childhood. Her family's pampering, and my unconditional love, had made her think she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. She never cared about anyone else's feelings. She thought the entire world revolved around her. The ultimate spoiled princess. I'm giving you one last chance. Get over here right now and apologize or else. Before she could finish, I hung up. Sienna walked over, teasing me playfully. Ooh, was that your fiancé? I smiled bitterly, pulling her into my arms by her waist. Fiancé? No way. That was just Chloe. You know, the whole family arranged engagement thing. But don't worry, I'll explain everything to my parents. I'm bringing you home to meet them this weekend. Sienna nodded thoughtfully, but a clever smile quickly played on her lips. She said confidently, Trust me, your parents will be much happier with me. The Miller family estate sat on a rolling hill overlooking the northern bay of the city. Inside the grand dining room, the atmosphere was usually steeped in quiet, corporate dignity. But on this Saturday afternoon, my mother, Victoria Miller, was sitting on the leather sofa, staring at the Snapchat screenshots I had forwarded to her 3 nights ago. My father, Richard Miller, stood by the mantelpiece, his face dark as a thundercloud. She did this the night before you were supposed to sign the marriage papers? Victoria's voice was dangerously low, her fingers trembling with suppressed fury. As she set her teacup down, the Davis girl has truly lost her mind. I cut off the joint credit lines yesterday, Mom, I said smoothly, stepping into the room. And I called off the engagement. Richard turned, his eyes searching my face. Your mother and I arranged that match 20 years ago because the Davis Group was our primary logistics partner. But if that girl treats my son like a stepping stone for her cheap trysts, the Davis Group can find another sponsor. You don't have to worry about the engagement anymore, Dad, I said. I took a step back and opened the double doors of the drawing room. Sienna walked in. She was wearing a knee-length, ivory silk dress, her long hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, carrying a beautifully wrapped box of rare vintage tea for my mother. She looked radiant, elegant, and completely at ease. Mom, Dad, I said, taking Sienna's hand and lacing my fingers through hers. This is Sienna, my wife. Victoria froze. Richard's teacup stayed suspended in midair. Wife, Victoria repeated, her eyes wide as she looked from my hand to Sienna's face. Sienna offered a warm, graceful smile, stepping forward with total poise. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I know this is sudden. Ethan and I got married at City Hall 2 days ago. I know we bypassed the formal introductions, but I promise you I intend to love and respect your son for the rest of my life. Victoria stood up slowly. She walked over, scanning Sienna's face, then looked down at the gold wedding band resting on Sienna's left ring finger. The Miller family knew Sienna. Everyone in high society knew of the Sterling family's youngest daughter. A girl who had graduated top of her class, managed her family's private art foundation and maintained a flawless reputation. A sudden brilliant smile broke across Victoria's face. Sienna Sterling. Victoria breathed, taking both of Sienna's hands into hers. Ethan, you absolute fool. Why didn't you bring her home sooner? Richard let out a booming laugh, his previous anger vanishing into thin air. Sienna. My God, your father and I were discussing the harbor development project just last week. Welcome to the family, my dear. Before Sienna could even hand over the gift, the heavy oak front doors of the estate were slammed open with a deafening crash. Ethan. Chloe's furious, high-pitched scream echoed through the grand foyer. She stormed into the drawing room, wearing an expensive designer coat, her hair slightly messy, her face pale with rage. Behind her stood her mother, Mrs. Davis, looking anxious and flustered. Ethan Miller, what the hell is wrong with you? Chloe shrieked, pointing a manicured finger directly at my face. You canceled our custom tuxedo order. You blocked my card. Do you have any idea how much embarrassment you caused me at the boutique today? She hadn't even noticed my parents sitting 5 feet away. Chloe, Victoria's voice cut through the air like a frozen blade. Chloe stopped dead in her tracks, finally realizing my parents were in the room. She swallowed hard, quickly pulling up her usual spoiled, tragic facade. Aunt Victoria. Chloe whimpered, her eyes instantly welling with fake tears. Ethan is picking fights with me over nothing. He's using some stupid internet rumor to ruin our wedding. You have to tell him. Stupid internet rumor? Victoria stood up, picking up her phone and sliding the crystal clear photo of Chloe fast asleep on a king-sized bed in a lace nightgown, right under Chloe's nose. Is this a rumor, Chloe? Or is this your idea of enjoying your freedom before marriage? Chloe's face drained of every drop of color. She took a staggering step back, her lower lip trembling. Auntie, Jax was just drunk. Nothing happened. I don't care if anything happened or not, Richard Miller boomed his voice, echoing off the high ceilings. As of 8 o'clock this morning, the Miller Group has officially terminated all supply chain contracts with the Davis Group. Your father has already been notified by our legal department. What? Mrs. Davis gasped from the doorway, her hands flying to her mouth. Mr. Miller, please. Our company's stock will plunge 30% if you pull out. Now. Then you should have taught your daughter how to respect her fiancé, Richard spat, turning his back on them. Chloe's eyes flashed with manic desperation. She lunged toward me, reaching for my arm. Ethan, you're doing this on purpose. You're just trying to scare me. You love me. You've loved me since we were 7 years old. I stepped aside effortlessly. Sienna stepped into the light beside me, resting her hand comfortably on my forearm. When Chloe's eyes fell onto Sienna, her mouth opened in utter shock. Sienna? Chloe gasped, her eyes dropping to our intertwined fingers and then to the matching gold bands glittering under the chandelier. What is she doing here? I brought my wife home to meet my parents, Chloe, I said flatly, my voice completely devoid of emotion. You can leave now. Wife, Chloe let out a sharp, hysterical laugh that sounded like glass shattering on stone. Are you insane, Ethan? You've been married for 2 days to Sienna Sterling. Who are you trying to fool? She turned to Sienna, her face twisted with a mixture of jealousy and sheer disbelief. Sienna, did he pay you to play along with this little circus? How much did he give you to pretend to be his wife just to make me jealous? Sienna didn't lose her temper. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at Chloe with an expression of mild, elegant pity, the kind of look a high society lady gives to a misbehaving child throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. Miss Davis, Sienna said smoothly, her voice clear and sweet. Ethan didn't pay me anything, but he did promise me a rustic wedding in Montana, and he bought me a very nice cup of coffee this morning. That was more than enough for me. You lying bitch. Chloe shrieked, taking a step forward. Before she could reach Sienna, 2 heavy-set Miller Estate security guards stepped into the drawing room, grabbing Chloe by her arms. Get your hands off me. Chloe thrashed against their grip. Ethan, tell them to let me go. I know you're just mad. I'll fire Jax. ELL delete Snapchat. Just stop this ridiculous act. Take them out, Victoria ordered flatly, waving her hand toward the door. And inform security that neither Miss Davis nor her family is ever permitted on these grounds again. The guards dragged Chloe and her weeping mother out through the front doors. Chloe's shrieks of rage and panic echoed down the paved driveway until the heavy iron gates clicked shut, sealing the estate in total peace. That evening, the Miller Group issued a formal press statement. Official statement. The Miller Group hereby announces the permanent dissolution of the arranged engagement between Ethan Miller and Chloe Davis due to irreparable breaches of personal trust. Furthermore, we are proud to announce the legal marriage of Ethan Miller and Sienna Sterling. The high society news exploded. Within 3 hours, the stock of the Davis Group plummeted by 32%. Several major commercial banks, sensing the impending collapse of the Davis family's backing, called in their short-term loans immediately. I sat in my penthouse study, reviewing the financial reports on my laptop while Sienna sat on the sofa nearby, sketching floral arrangements for our Montana venue. My phone rang. It was Jax. I tapped answer and set it on speaker. Miller. Jax's arrogant, panicked voice came through the line. What the hell did you do to Chloe's family accounts? She was supposed to buy me a Porsche today. The dealership just declined her card. I let out a soft, genuine laugh. Jax, I said calmly. She's not rich anymore. Her father's company is going into bankruptcy. If you want a Porsche, I suggest you go get a job. You bastard. Jax yelled. She loved me. She came to my bed the night before your wedding. Then you keep her, I replied smoothly. You two deserve each other. I hung up and blocked his number permanently. Sienna looked up from her sketchpad, her dark eyes sparkling with quiet amusement. A Porsche? She really knows how to pick them. I walked over, leaned down, and kissed the top of her head. I'm just glad I picked you. 3 weeks later, the Big Sky Valley in Montana was bathed in the golden light of an early autumn afternoon. The crisp mountain breeze rustled through the yellowing aspen trees, carrying the clean scent of pine and fresh earth. A small, elegant wooden chapel sat in the middle of a private ranch surrounded by wild lavender and white roses. Only our closest friends and immediate family had been invited, about 30 people in total. No cameras, no press, no corporate politics. Just a peaceful, breathtaking celebration under the vast blue sky. Sienna stood inside the private dressing room of the ranch lodge, wearing a custom ivory lace gown that draped gracefully around her figure. Her veil was long and sheer, catching the soft mountain light. I walked into the room wearing a tailored dark navy suit, holding a small wooden box containing our custom wedding rings. When she turned around and looked at me, my breath caught in my throat. "You look breathtaking, Mrs. Miller," I whispered, stepping close to wrap my arms gently around her waist. Sienna giggled, leaning her head against my chest, listening to the steady beat of my heart. "You don't look too bad yourself, Mr. Miller. Ready to walk down the aisle?" "More than ready," I smiled, kissing her forehead. Bang! The wooden side door of the lodge dressing room was suddenly shoved open. A figure rushed inside. It was Chloe. She looked unrecognizable. The glamorous, immaculate high society princess was completely gone. She wore a rumpled cheap jacket, her hair was unwashed, and her face was gaunt with dark, purple circles under her eyes. In just 3 weeks, the collapse of her family's firm and her social standing had hollowed her out completely. She had used her remaining savings to fly to Montana, tracking down our private ranch venue through a local catering worker she had bribed. "Ethan." Chloe breathed, her voice raspy and broken as she stared at me in my wedding suit. I immediately stepped in front of Sienna, my face turning to stone. "Chloe, how did you get in here?" Chloe's eyes drifted to Sienna's white lace veil, and a sudden violent sob burst from her throat. She fell onto her knees right there on the wooden floorboards, tears streaming down her pale, unwashed cheeks. "Ethan, please." Chloe wept, reaching out her shaking hands toward my shoes. "Don't do this. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Jax was a parasite. He took my money. He tried to blackmail my father. He ran away the second our cards were frozen." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with an agonizing, manic desperation. "I don't care about the Porsche. I don't care about my freedom. I just want you back, Ethan. We've been together for 20 years. You promised my dad you'd protect me forever. You can't just give my life to another woman." Sienna slowly stepped out from behind me. She stood beside me, her long veil flowing in the mountain breeze coming through the open door, looking down at Chloe kneeling in her dirty clothes. "Miss Davis," Sienna spoke, her voice clear, calm, and filled with an unshakable dignity. "Ethan didn't give your life away. You threw it in the trash the moment you posted those photos." Chloe glared at Sienna with raw, poisonous hatred. "Shut up, you homewrecker. You stole my husband. You took advantage of his anger to drag him to City Hall." "I didn't steal anything," Sienna replied softly, leaning her head comfortably against my shoulder. "Ethan was single when I met him at the harbor. And he chose me because I don't need to hurt the people I love to feel important." Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came out. Every word Sienna spoke landed like a surgical cut, stripping away the last remaining shreds of her pathetic self-delusion. "Guards." I called out flatly toward the doorway. 2 heavy-set ranch security guards stepped into the room. "Get this trespasser off the property," I instructed, not giving Chloe another glance. "Ethan. No. Ethan. Look at me." Chloe shrieked, thrashed, and kicked her legs as the guards grabbed her by her arms, hoisting her up and dragging her out toward the gravel driveway. "I'm your Chloe. You loved me for 20 years. Ethan." Her shrieks echoed across the open valley, getting quieter and quieter until they were swallowed completely by the rustling pine trees. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun dipped behind the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, casting a warm, amber glow across the valley. The wooden chapel doors swung open. Sienna walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her white veil trailing behind her like a cloud, her eyes locked entirely onto mine. There were no flashing press lights, no corporate photographers, just the quiet rustle of autumn leaves and the soft music of an acoustic guitar played by a local musician. When her father placed her hand in mine, he smiled warmly. "Take care of her, Ethan." "With my life, sir," I replied. We stood before the minister, exchanging our vows under the open sky. "Do you, Ethan Miller, take Sienna Sterling to be your wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" I looked into Sienna's shimmering, clear eyes, the eyes that held an entire ocean of genuine, unconditional love. "I do," I said, my voice strong, steady, and clear. "And do you, Sienna Sterling, take Ethan Miller?" "I do," Sienna interrupted softly before the minister could even finish, a radiant, breathless smile breaking across her lips. The small crowd burst into warm laughter and applause. I pulled out the gold band, sliding it smoothly onto her ring finger, and she did the same for me. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister smiled. You may kiss the bride. I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her flush against my chest, and kissed her deeply under the golden autumn sky, outside the wooden perimeter fence of the ranch, standing on the dusty dirt road. Beside a local sheriff's cruiser, Chloe stood in handcuffs. The sheriff had arrived 15 minutes ago after our security detail called in her trespassing violation. Through the wooden slats of the fence, Chloe watched the entire ceremony. She saw the way I held Sienna, not with the cautious, hesitant patience I had shown her for 20 years, but with a fierce, protective, boundless devotion. She saw the way Sienna looked at me, not as a reliable safety net to be used and discarded, but as her entire world. A single, blood-red tear cut through the dirt on Chloe's cheek. She had spent 20 years believing that Ethan Miller was an infinite resource, a man who would forever buy her dinners, forgive her boyfriends, pay her bills, and wait quietly at home while she played her cheap games. Now, standing in handcuffs on a dusty mountain road, watching the man she had discarded give the world to another woman, the ultimate, terrifying reality, finally crushed her soul. He was gone, and he was never coming back. The sheriff opened the rear door of the cruiser. Get in, Miss Davis. You can explain your trespassing to the judge in town. Chloe didn't fight. She didn't scream. She sat silently in the back seat, staring at the Golden Valley through the glass as the car drove away, leaving her past behind in the dust. Over the next 6 months, the social and financial collapse of the Davis family was complete and irreversible. Without the backing of the Miller Group's supply contracts, the Davis Group defaulted on its major bank loans. Their commercial assets were auctioned off at a fraction of their value, and Chloe's father was forced to retire in shame, moving his family into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the outer edges of the city. Chloe, once the most envied heiress in high society, was forced to take a job as a floor clerk at a mid-tier department store. Her former friends, the same people who had cheered her on during her Snapchat trysts, completely blacklisted her from their social circles, terrified of offending the Miller and Sterling families. As for Jax, when he realized Chloe had been stripped of her trust fund and credit cards, he tried to blackmail her father with old photos of Chloe to extract $100,000. Chloe's father immediately reported him to the police for grand extortion. Jax was arrested at a local club, convicted within 3 months, and sentenced to 5 years in state penitentiary. One rainy Tuesday evening, 6 months after our Montana wedding, I drove my SUV through the city center on my way back from a Miller Group board meeting. The rain was pouring over the asphalt, lightning flashing across the dark skyline. While stopped at a red light near the shopping district, I looked out my window. Standing under a leaky bus shelter across the street was Chloe. She wore a faded raincoat and a cheap uniform, holding a soggy paper bag filled with discount groceries. Her hair was thin, her skin pale, her eyes hollow and dead. She looked like a ghost wandering the streets. She turned her head and caught sight of my dark SUV. Through the rain-slicked glass, our eyes met for one brief second. She saw my gold wedding band gleaming against the steering wheel. She saw the sleek, expensive interior of my car. She saw the man who had once been her devoted prince, now looking at her as if she were a total stranger. She took a desperate, staggering step out of the shelter into the pouring rain, her mouth moving, crying out my name through the storm. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't stop. The red light turned green. I stepped on the accelerator, the engine humming smoothly as the SUV glided forward, slicing through the puddles, leaving the shivering figure under the bus shelter far behind in the dark. 2 years later, the sun rose over the private beach of our coastal home, casting a brilliant, golden light across the calm ocean waves. On the wooden deck overlooking the water, a small white playpen sat under the shade of a wide umbrella. Inside the playpen, a 1-year-old girl with bright, dark eyes and dark curly hair was happily playing with a set of wooden building blocks. Sienna stood beside the railing wearing a soft cotton sundress, sipping a cup of warm tea, her hair blowing gently in the morning breeze. She looked radiant, healthy and deeply at peace. I walked out onto the deck wearing a casual linen shirt, carrying a plate of fresh fruit. I set the plate down, walked up behind Sienna, and wrapped my arms securely around her waist, pulling her back against my chest. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Miller?" I whispered, resting my chin on her shoulder, kissing her cheek. Sienna smiled, leaning back against me, her hands resting over mine on her waist. "I was just thinking," she said softly, looking out at the endless, glittering horizon, "about the night you asked me if I wanted to come to your house and watch your dog do backflips." I let out a low, genuine laugh, kissing her neck. "Best pickup line in history." "It really was," Sienna giggled, turning around in my arms, looking up into my eyes with an ocean of pure, unadulterated love. "You know, you never did show me that backflip." "That's because Tommy lied." I grinned, pulling her close, pressing my lips against hers in a deep, sweet, timeless kiss. Beside us, our daughter let out a happy, babbling giggle, clapping her small hands together as the morning sun washed over our home, bathing our world in an eternal, unbreakable light.